I was talking to a friend the other day and it turns out we don't apply a chamois cream in the same way. He applies it straight to the pad. I thought this was weird. I've been cycling for 3 years and I've never heard of anyone doing this. So I thought I would give it a Google and investigate it. It's a thing. Basically, they used to apply chamois to the leather chamois pads that they used to use to condition the leather, basically soften it up before they'll go riding on it for a long period of time. Of course, this is 2022, you don't really need to do that anymore and you can apply it directly to yourself. But then I had the question, is it better still applying it directly to the chamois? So I've gone to test it just for you. So I have my two chamois creams that I normally use here. The Asos stuff I usually use for a hotter day just because it has that kind of cooling menthol effect. It makes it feel better on a hot day. And then I have the Velo Skin stuff here just because it smells great and it's really nice and thick and creamy. So I really like this one for most of my general purpose cycling. If you want to see a review of this one, then I'll put a link over here for you. But otherwise, both of these chamois work really, really well. So I wanted to test both of them using both methods. I've always applied the chamois directly to myself, to the areas where I feel like I need it the most, but I had to test this for myself. So for the past 3 weeks, I've been testing the chamois both applied directly to the pad and applied directly to myself, and I've been doing it with both of these chamois creams as well, just to see if there's a difference from cream to cream. So with all that being said, here is my verdict. First of all, I'm going to talk about the upsides for applying directly and the upsides for applying directly to the pad. So firstly, applying directly to yourself. I find that really you can use a lot less chamois cream because you're applying it specifically to the areas that you need. And I find that it just really helps reduce the friction in those specific areas. I just think it's a bit more precise. The positives to applying it directly to the pad, I actually have found that there is one, and for me it tends to happen more on the TT bike here because you're so much further forward in the ball area. I find that that tends to have less friction just because you've applied it to the pad, and it's an area that's a lot harder to apply directly to the skin just because it moves around a lot more. So I think if you have a much further forward position on your bike, applying to the front bit of that chamois is actually quite a good way to prevent friction there. Now let's talk about the downsides of both of them. And the first one is if you're applying directly to yourself, if you don't apply enough on the first use, then you kind of have to double dip your finger, unless you use a new finger. But it's just a bit less hygienic, I think, by dipping your fingers in more often. Then for the downsides of applying directly to the chamois. So the first downside that I have here, I find is it kind of feels like you're just putting on like a wet diaper to begin with. It's fine after 2 minutes, but to begin with, it just feels quite damp around that area. The second downside I find is that you can't be as precise with how much chamois that you're using. I always feel like I'm using a bit too much and kind of going through my chamois cream a bit too fast. And that's because you're just not applying directly to the area, so you kind of need to cover the whole chamois pad. And you're probably applying it to areas where you actually might not need the chamois. So for me, that's what I found as the upsides and the downsides. Well, I guess it turns out that it doesn't really matter which way you apply it. You just got to do what works for you personally. For me, I'm going to still apply it the same way, and for the time trial bike, I'll put a little bit on the front of the chamois just to help with the ball area a little bit more. But other than that, ultimately, I came looking for answers and I didn't really get any. Just do what works for you.